everybody, and we actually have 1 minute till, so we're starting a tad early, but I'll go ahead and start the story anyhow because I am so excited about our guest today. Hi everyone, I'm Belinda Allen, and this is the Power Platform Share, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host, Mr. Steve Endow. Hello, Steve.
Hello, thank you.
and the amazing Mr. Mariano Gomez. Hello, Mariano.
Thank you, thank you.
And as most of you know, the story of what this is and why we have it, it started with Mariano and Steve and I sharing information about the Power Platform with each other in chat as we were growing and learning. And we took our conversation to Twitter and we decided, you know what, let's just take it to YouTube Live so that people could watch us and learn with us while we learn. And so we started inviting some amazing guests, and we have one now that I am so stoked about, because before you introduce her, Mariano, I want to tell that why I think she's such a rock star. At the MVP Summit, obviously this year it wasn't because it was virtual, but the year before, they started naming like a special person for each of the Power Platform categories. And guess who was the Power Automate? Of course, it was Flow at the time. Rockstar, or whatever it was called. That girl, right there. And I was like, look at her at Chickaroony, woohoo! So I was so happy. That was quite amazing. So I became a giant fan of hers right from that start. I pay attention to everything she does. And let's see, it was Embass Online, right? I think she was a
earlier
co-host.
this year in May.
Yeah, and I'm like, check it out. She's a co-host. That is so amazing. So spot on with the hero. So Mariano, why don't you introduce our guest?
Absolutely delighted to have Miss Elaiza Benitez here with us today. Just to continue along the lines of what you were saying, Elaiza is, to me, one of the top rising stars in our community. She is an amazing human being. She is super hilarious, and she's recently a homeowner. So I'm just gonna turn it over to Elaiza just to have her introduce herself, expand a little bit more about her personal journey through the MVP program. Yes, she's a Microsoft MVP.
And, for what are you an MVP? For Power Automate?
No, for go ahead.
For business applications.
Ah, nice.
Enough of those data platform people.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait. I'm a data platform girl. Hey, watch it, sucker. I can just connect you right now.
Yes, there you go. So, it's definitely a pleasure, Elaiza, to have you here on board with us today. And I'm just going to turn it over to you. Feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've done, this amazing MVP award experience, and, where you see yourself in 20 years.
So thanks, Steve, Mariano, and Belinda for having me on the Power Platform Share Show. I'm really stoked to be here. So for those of you who don't know me, hello, my name is Elaiza Benitez. I live in Wellington in New Zealand. I work for a Microsoft partner called Theta. So I'm based in our Wellington office, but we've got a team nationwide. I really like my team in Wellington. We do a lot of mischief together behind the scenes. So in terms of my team in Wellington, I work in the Dynamics 365 team, but we also take on board the Power Platform. And my other colleagues are specialized in Business Central and NAV, which is ERP or ERP for the smaller SMEs in terms of Business Central. And so my journey with Dynamics 365 started back in 2009. So I started with version 4. So that's what it was called back then, Dynamics 4. And then that evolved so I originally started in sales. So the story behind it was I was in my final year of uni. So I was doing what we call the honors program here in New Zealand, which is like your first year of postgraduate studies. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but at the university they had what they call a career fest. So you had different companies that would come to the university campus that would talk to the students and potentially recruit them as part of their graduate program. So in my final year of undergraduate study, that's when I came across a Microsoft partner in New Zealand, and they were offering a scholarship at the time for students who were in their final year of university. And the woman I was speaking at the time, she was pretty friendly, and she was open to talking to me, which she didn't have to, because I'm just a student not knowing what I want to do in life. and so she told me about the scholarship program, because she said, hey, if you don't want to work next year, our company offers a scholarship where we will fund part of your university fees, but you'll have to come in when you can, like during the semester break, so that you can help us out and get some experience. So that's what I did, and so I helped out every now and then, and they really liked who I was as a person, in terms of personality and being friendly all the time, and helpful towards others. And so when it came to recruitment for the following year, for their graduate program, they were only after developers, but they said, just go ahead and do the boot camp interviews anyway. So I went along, and I knew it wouldn't work out, because I don't a developer
What's
that? So I didn't make the cut for that program, which I knew I wouldn't, but because they knew what I was like, they wanted to still have me on board in the company. So they actually went out of their way to make a role so that I could still be in the company, but it was in the sales team. So I was a sales analyst or administrator, so I worked alongside the GM of sales for the company at the time. Mm-hmm. And that's how I picked up Dynamics CRM4, because the company was using it to manage not only their sales in terms of their pipeline, but also a bit of the service desk side of things. So with Dynamics 365, there's the case management module. Mm-hmm. So they were using that as part of managing their customers under the service delivery arm of the company. And so that's how I got my foot in the door. And not knowing what Dynamics CRM4 was like when I came across it, for me at the time, it was it was intuitive to use for me. I don't know about others. Mm-hmm. And then my other colleague gave me this big, thick textbook.
Those CRM manuals were pretty thick back then.
Yeah, it's a manual for Dynamics CRM4, and from there it was self-learning. I learned how to create views, how to create fields, what it was like to use the out-of-box reporting wizard. This, of course, was all in a sandbox environment. It wasn't in their live environment. And so that's how I fell into that path, because I really liked Dynamics CRM4. I understood it. And so over time, we did some enhancements. And then eventually I wanted to, get out of sales, because I didn't think I wanted to be in sales forever. I sat in a few sales presentations, and the sales life cycle can be pretty brutal. So anyone who is out there today as a salesperson or an account manager, I know how you feel, and I know all the stuff that you go through, because I have seen it. And then, so what happened was there was a project, and it was a bespoke project. So a bespoke project means that it's not an off-the-shelf system. It's completely custom built, and it was for a government agency. So this government agency is responsible for, so the project was for people who are learning to get certified in a particular skill, such as hairdressing, plumbing, yeah, those are the two examples I could think of. And the bespoke system was to act as a platform that would collect all the messages from their systems for the purpose of understanding whether that apprentice or trainee has met the credits that they need to be qualified, basically. And so that system went live, and the customer needed some help in triaging all the inquiries that came through. No one wanted to go there, so I was like, I'll do it. Take me, I'm up for the challenge. And so they're like, oh, okay. So they put me in there. And so what was meant to be a 2-week engagement ended up being longer than that because, again, I just learned on my feet and just learned how to, resolve the issues. And so that led to me training their tier 1 and 2 team up in Auckland. And then I worked on the enhancements project because I needed to do more improvements or fix things that they didn't get in the first round. So I was actually there for over a year with that customer. And then once I finished up with them, I then moved into service delivery, which is supporting customers who have already gone live, the contract with the Microsoft partner. And then so I did that for, I think, like a year and a half before I was like, okay, I think I want to move on to the project delivery team, but there were no roles going at the time. So then what happened was the week of my 25th birthday,
Which was when, last week?
Yeah, I know, she's such a baby.
It's like, oh my God, you make it sound like it's so back hard.
Oh, you turned 25 and life ended as it did.
So yeah, when the week of my 25th birthday, I celebrated it in Melbourne, and while I was there, I did 4 interviews, and I got 2 offers in the end. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll accept one and just go for it. So then I packed up and moved over to Melbourne in Australia, and I worked for 3 other Microsoft partners in my time there. So I was there for over 6 years, so under 7 years. And then it was in my time there, that's where I became a Microsoft MVP. So awesome. Another story was my journey into the blog and YouTube world. So the story behind that.
For those people listening to us, tell us what your blog, what's the name of your blog? Because it has a really cool catchy name to it.
Oh, really? Okay, so I wanted to blog initially because I felt that there were some things that I knew that weren't necessarily being covered yet out there, but I mainly wanted to do YouTube videos. So as someone who likes to learn from watching and seeing things, I wanted to do videos because at the time, any video that was uploaded was to do with recorded webinars, Skype meetings, because Teams wasn't around back then, or GoToMeetings, but no one really did the whole tutorial style. So yeah, another thing is I used to be a tutor back in university, which is something I enjoyed. So I thought, well, how about I do something similar but for Dynamics CRM, which is what it was called back then. So then I thought about it for months, and I was kind of putting it off because I didn't have that confidence. I wasn't sure. And then one day I came across someone else's YouTube channel who posted some videos, and his name is Ben Hosk, so he's based out of the UK. And one day I just commented on something that he posted on LinkedIn, and I said, oh, I've always wanted to do videos, but I'm too afraid to do so. So then he connected with me offline on LinkedIn and actually gave me advice. He encouraged me to do it. He said, the hardest part of it all is starting, which is true. Mm-hmm. So finally I did it. But as Mariano said, what did you call your blog? And so I was like, well, what do I call it? Do I just call it my first name, last name? And then I was like, oh, why don't I just go for something simple? Because it's me, and I'm going to be the one that's doing it. So my blog is called Benitez here. That's the same as my Twitter handler. So that's how that came about. and I used a Microsoft recording software at the time, but I didn't know that the free version would cut off after 10 minutes. So every time I went over 10 minutes, it would stop and I would freak out. I wouldn't understand why. And then I read somewhere, like, after the 10-minute mark, it'll just stop. So I was like, oh, okay, I should use something else now. So that's
the software was censoring you.
Yeah. So then when I used Camtasia. So I've been using Camtasia since 2014. Yeah, 2014 is when I started. And then I went through periods where I knew what I wanted to blog about, and then everyone goes through their ups and downs, and there was this one point where I just didn't have the motivation, I didn't have the drive, and then when I got myself out of that mindset, I then started to cover portals, so formerly known as Dynamics 365 portals. Now it's called Power Apps portals. So then that picked up momentum, and I started to enjoy it again. And the reason why I decided to do Dynamics 365 portals was for the same reasons, where I feel that there's a lot of things that could still be shared with the community, with people who want to learn or are having troubles with Dynamics 365 portals. Because it's one of those things where it's hard, it's tricky in the beginning, but then once you get your head around it, it's fine. And when I look back to my learning of portals, I kind of wished that there was something that I could go to in terms of reference material. Yeah. And at the time, it was the ADX Studio websites, and there were other bloggers, so Nick Dolman, Nick Haydock, and Colin as well. So they're based in Canada. I call them the CNN. CNN.
That's funny.
But yeah, so I just wanted to cover, tips and tricks.
So do you like working with portals and Power Apps more than the model-driven apps?
It doesn't. I don't know. Like, for me, it's still the same. I still see portals as portals. I don't see it as any different.
That's the cool thing coming from Dynamics 365, right? Because a lot of this Power Platform really surged from the XRM, platform in general. So to you guys, it's been a smooth transition, I would hope, to learning some of these tools, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm sure anyone who is comfortable with Dynamics 365 would be comfortable with CDS, because it's essentially, like for like. And then, so while I was doing my Dynamics 365 portals vlogs, that's when I was nominated. So I was nominated by another friend in Melbourne. So his name is Andre Margano. So we were colleagues at the time. I didn't know he had put it through. How I found out was when I got a confirmation email saying, that you've been nominated, blah, 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 and it's going to go through the process.
Awesome.
And so I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think about. I never considered being a Microsoft MVP when I started, because for me it was all about producing content and in a nice structured manner, rather than pushing things out on a consistent basis. Because I know that's what some other people do who are on YouTube, but for me it was always about the quality and the content. And even now, in terms of my equipment, it's not the latest and greatest. Before I moved back home to New Zealand, I was always using a webcam in terms of like my visual and my audio recording. And that's because I didn't think I need the greatest technology or equipment. I felt as long as my content was good, then it would be fine, and it has been fine. Like, it's been great. So thank you everyone who has been following me over the years. I really appreciate it, and I hope you are learning from me, because that's always been my goal. It's never been about the numbers or the views. Well, okay. It was very exciting. It was very exciting though when I reached the 1,000 subscribers mark.
Wow.
That was exciting.
So look, I want to ask you a question. Now that you've been posting your videos for a while, to see, because you're younger than us, have you gone in to do a search in Bing or Google and ended up finding your answer coming from yourself?
Yeah. So the one that I always go back to is, so I did a blog post on, so I called it the ET, the Elaiza's Triangle. So it is how you should approach products in Dynamics 365, because there's a particular structure. So I made like this triangle that showed you what you needed to do at the base level and work your way up to get the product hierarchy in place. So that's something I go back to every now and then.
Yeah, I always say I don't write blogs for myself. Actually, I don't write blogs for others. I write them for myself because I really can't remember anything. So anytime I have something in my mind, I just write it down, blog about it. Lo and behold, when I'm Googling about it later on, I find I wrote it myself. So it's like,
true story, Mariano. I was on the team that was developed the test for Dynamics GP, the exams, and on the installation exam for SSRS, there was one question, like, when you get this error, what should you do? Unanimously, we all thought the answer was look at Mariano's blog, because every one of us did that every time. You know which entry I'm talking about, Steve? Like, there was an error, like something wasn't, it was a number error that something wasn't installed, or you had to go and add it to a config file. And you know what I'm talking about now, Mariano? Or no?
Yep. It happens to me all the time that I will find this blog post, and it's from 2014, 2015. I have zero recollection writing it. I'm like reading this, like, wow, this person's smart. And I realize I wrote it, or someone sends this article to me. I'm like, well, they sound like they know what they're talking about, but I have no recollection of writing it. It's hilarious.
And you said something, Elaiza, that struck home, especially now that we're working with the Power Platform and even BC. So Steve and I are doing some work with BC as well, from different perspectives, him from developing, me from reporting, and from Power Platform approach. And that is that a lot of times we're training and doing things while we're learning. And the cadence is so fast in the world of the Power Platform that we have no choice but to be that way. But one of the huge advantages I find as being an MVP is, I call it my Rolodex file, but that's, you know what I mean. It's my contact list, right? So I gotta update my verbiage. It's not my Rolodex file, but I would say I got a great Rolodex file. But
it's like, what are these people talking about? Rolodex.
My contact list, right? But it's changes so fast, and there's so many new things added that, I mean, we're just forced in a world where that has to be the case. So it has to be our personality that we want to keep up the learning and keep adding things in. So
yeah, I agree. And it's funny that you've mentioned that, because that's how I fell in love with Flows and Power Automate, because I feel like I've talked about this 1,000 times, but it's fine. I like telling people this story. So my journey with the Power Platform started with, I guess CDS, but beyond CDS was Flows and Power Automate. So I heard of Microsoft Flow at the time, probably around 2016, which is when it started, to come out, and people were like, "Oh, what is this?" And I don't know whose blog post I read at the time, and I saw it, and it was still in its infancy, so I didn't really take much notice of it. And then, by 2018, beginning of 2018, it just skyrocketed in terms of this thing that can connect, different platforms, so you can push and pull data or perform updates, creates and deletes. So in 2018, there was New Zealand's first Dynamics 365 Saturday event, And in that same year, Australia had their second one. And the Australian one came first in terms of the event. So that was in May. And then the New Zealand one was, I think, in possibly September. Yeah, September. So I didn't have enough time to utilize flows in my May presentation, but I wanted to see if I could learn and pick it up by the time I would present in New Zealand. So I gave myself, I think it's 2 months to learn and get my solution working that I had presented back in May with flows. And it was a lot of hair pulling because it was different, but I wanted to learn it and I wanted to see if I could do it. And if not, then I had my Dynamics 365 Classic workflow to fall back on. But I did it. I learned Flow, and then I presented it in September. And then as part of that learning process, I was thinking, there's going to be others in the community who have a background in Dynamics 365 who are so used to building and configuring in Classic workflows that I thought, how about I start doing videos to help them transition? Because back then I saw and I knew, this is going to be our future because it opens up more doors than what Classic workflows has done. Now, the two do need to catch up with each other. There are some things that, Flow can do better than Classic workflows, but there are still fundamental principles that still only work in Classic workflows. So the product team is working on, trying to get those paired up together in terms of parity, but that's still a work in progress. But I really like Flow. I got it straight away when I did Shane Young's EDX Power Platform course. So in that Power Platform course, it was broken down to like Canvas apps, model-driven apps for CDS, a little bit of SharePoint, just a little bit, and flows. And when it came to flows, I was like, oh, I get this. Whereas when I was doing the Canvas app modules, I was like, oh, I don't know about this. Yeah.
So on that note, that you're here for some show and tell, right?
Yes, I am.
We love to see what you're working on today. What are you going to show us? What do you have going on that you're working on?
Yeah, so there's two things that I do want to showcase. So the first one is to do with the new way of configuring actions for SLA items, which I'll explain shortly in Dynamics 365. The other one is I cracked the Da Vinci Code. No, I'm kidding. I
wouldn't be surprised, by the way.
I came across this problem-solving challenge where I needed to basically make words that were in capital letters, so all uppercase, into what we call proper case. So the first letter of each word is capitalized and everything else is lowercase. That came about from like a customer project because they have a particular system or application that churns out some data, and it was in the form of an XML file. So with that particular property in the XML file, I just needed to make it proper case because it was all uppercase, because the output that they were generating was going to be sent to someone external in their company. So I was like, oh, okay, I need to figure out how to do this. So I figured out how to do that. So that's something I can share, because today proper case isn't yet supported in Flow. It is in Canvas apps. And I did suggest it to Steven Giuliano. So he said, yeah, great idea. We'll look at, having it in Flow. So I was like, okay, cool. Which is one thing I love about being a Microsoft MVP. You could just send an email and they're like, oh, yeah, cool. So I'll start sharing my screen. So what I'll first show is...
Can you share okay?
Yeah, okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep, it's getting Yep.
Is to do with the new way of configuring actions for SLAs in Dynamics 365. So what is an SLA? It's a service level agreement that is tied to a case. So a case is an out-of-the-box record in Dynamics 365. It's used to capture things like issues raised, problems raised, inquiries, requests. It's quite flexible, and so the nice thing about case management in Dynamics 365 is that you can have service level agreements to it, and in each service level agreement you have what we call SLA items. So an example is when a case is created, what do you want to define as the first response by? So based on, let's say, if they're a gold customer, they need to receive an acknowledgement or response from an agent within, let's say, 2 hours. Whereas if they're, let's say, bronze, they need to get a response within 8 hours maybe. So that's what an SLA item is. And within the SLA item is what we call action. So an action is if that SLA item duration that you've defined has not been met. So in other words, for a gold customer, if those 2 hours have been breached, then what do you want to happen? So that's what we call an action. So that's what I'll show you. Okay, so typically what happens is you get a case in the form of a phone call or an email. So I'm going to demonstrate sending an email to a shared mailbox. Once again, I need to log into my Gmail account.
It's crazy having 100 aliases, isn't it?
Yeah, this is one of my test ones. So if I just select this, I am stuck.
Thank you, regards. Thank you.
That's the same kind of message as this report's broke.
That doesn't sound like the typical cases I receive, but that's okay. We'll play along.
Okay, so I sent that from my test email account, so this is going to come through. One of the things that's really cool about Microsoft Dynamics 365 is that it's got native integration with Outlook. So even if you are an end user, got something like a shared mailbox, which is what you're seeing on screen, once you do that configuration to have those emails tracked to Dynamics 365 entities, it'll just seamlessly go through. So as you can see, if I click on this one, or if you just see it right now, there's a label, like a category here, that represents that it's tracked to Dynamics 365. So what happens is that eventually this will appear, including the file attachment, in Dynamics 365 in a queue. So we could see that it's instantly now been tracked to Dynamics 365. So if I go back to case management or customer service hub app, the name changes.
Oh, believe me, we're trying to keep up just as much as anybody else.
It'll then appear in a queue. So let me just change this to the particular mailbox. So this is the one that we had just created a minute ago. So now it's appeared. So the whole concept with a queue is that you don't really need to work within your shared mailbox anymore. You can work within Dynamics 365 by monitoring the queues and the items that come through, such as an email. And we see that that same file attachment appears in the email record that has been created, and we can see that same email message content. And then one of the nice things about working with queues and items in Customer Service Hub is that you can convert them into particular records. So in this scenario, I'm saying, okay, I want to convert it to a case. So as soon as I do that, it'll give me some options about what I want to do once this case has been created. So it's saying open the new case. And also because my test email address already exists against a particular contact record, it's automatically recognize that, so it'll track it straight away. So I don't have to manually, link it to that contact. It will know that that email address belongs to this particular record. Therefore, it'll just make that association. So now we can see that the email has been converted to a case, and this is the email it originated from. And so right off the bat, you'll see this timer ticking down. So this is my SLA item that represents that I want the first response to be within 3 minutes. So I chose it 3 minutes, but really in real life it's 2 hours. This is just for the purpose of the demo. So while that's doing its thing, this is what the flow looks like for that SLA item. So the really cool thing about actions now in Dynamics 365, since this was released, is that we can now use flows and Power Automate. Previously, you had to rely on workflows in Dynamics 365. So if you think back to what I mentioned earlier, that is within the framework of Dynamics 365, whereas Flow opens up the possibilities to perform actions with other platforms or products that you have subscription or entitlements to. So the example that I'm using here to demonstrate that is I'm saying to post a message to Microsoft Teams, and this scenario is when it's near non-compliance. So I configured the SLA item to do a warning once it's gone over 1 minute, where it will show it in Microsoft Teams. So it's going to post a message to the end user to warn them that, hey, this case that has been assigned to you, it's nearing compliance, so you need to, action it. In other words, get your ass off your chair and do something. So it'll send a message through to that person. So we can see that message has come through at 35 past 8. And so this is saying, hey, it's nearing compliance, and it's pulled through the case number. And then I'm saying, view that record in Dynamics 365. And I just put a little blurb in here to let them know that it's an automated message. So basically, when I click on that link, it'll automatically take them to that case record, so that they don't need to log in or do anything. It's just instant. And that's the kind of solutions that I like, where you're making that end user experience quite smooth, so that the person doesn't need to fluff around. They can just do what they need to do instantly. And so in terms of that flow, what we're doing is we're using the action post a message as a flow bot to a user, but the formatting in here is what we call markdown formatting for cards. So there is a docs.microsoft.com article that will explain the format that you can use. And what I found is that when you're posting to a user, you need to use Markdown. If you try to use HTML, it shows all the tags. But if you're using the action that's posting to a channel, you can use HTML or Markdown. So I did relay that feedback to the product team, so they're going to look into it. But the nice thing about Flow for SLA items is that you can have different scenarios catered for, and this is just a bare minimum example. Like, I will be expanding on this. This is just in its infancy, where you can then do things like delay. So if that person still hasn't done anything, then do some additional actions to keep messaging them or even escalating them. So in terms of this escalation, which I'll show you, this is where I'm saying that I want it to go to a channel. So if we go back to Microsoft Teams, we'll see that a message has come through to the escalation channel, and it's the same thing where that person can go directly to that Dynamics 365 record with one click, and they can action it. So that's something cool and funky. Like I said, I will be expanding on it, and at one point I do plan on making a WTF episode. I do want to point out, though, that, again, this is in its infancy in terms of the solution, so the way I've referenced how to get that Dynamics 365 URL is not best practice, so don't follow this. My next WTF episode will be covering how to retrieve the record URL of a Dynamics 365 record. So stay tuned.
Now you know a lot more content on Elaiza's blog. Please go and visit it. Benitez here. You want to make sure that you follow up on the WTF,
which stands for.
She's going to put out soon.
Clarify to people listening what WTF stands for.
So WTF stands for what the flow.
What the flow. That's right.
Because, that's what I was going through when I was learning, and I'm sure it applies to everyone who's studying flow.
What the flow.
Yeah.
So I had a quick question about the solution. It looks very cool, by the way. I can totally relate to that to deal with support cases. So is the SLA functionality, ancillary question, is SLA standard out of the box, or is that like a premium feature or anything?
No, so it comes with your licensing for Dynamics 365 Customer Service Hub. So it's included, And one of the other things that I also confirmed recently was, in terms of solution deployment, so ALM, what happens, because back then we weren't using flows. Flows weren't tied to SLAs, and now they are. So the answer around that is that when you include your SLA in a solution, behind the scenes, it will include the flows that are associated to SLA items. So then when you do an export of your solution and then import it into a target environment like UAT or production, it should be there. It should. I say
okay, so is SLA a new feature in Dynamics 365?
No.
Or has it been there for a while?
It's been there for a while, but the way of how you configure those actions is fairly new. So you can now use flow. Previously we couldn't use flow, but now you can.
So now Power Automate has that as a standard item where it can pick up on the SLA object or the SLA setting from.
Yeah, so if I just go back a step so that everyone on here can understand how that's configured. So what I'm doing is I'm heading over to the service management area of the Customer Service Hub app. And in here, there's an entity called Service Level Agreements. And this is the SLA that I had defined. So I'm just going to, do I need to do it? Oh, no, I don't. So this is that first response SLA item. So I'm just going to open this. And then down here is where we can configure actions. So when you click on that, it will automatically generate a flow. And this
That's super cool.
So this is a GUID that represents the action that's tied to the SLA item. And so it will already have predefined base actions. So they've clearly said do not delete or update. And then it uses what we call a switch action. So you can have different cases. Well, I know the terminology is a bit weird, but it's called a switch case. And within those switch cases is where you can define and customize your actions, basically. But everything where it says do not delete or update means don't delete it.
Or update it.
Which is fair enough, because the thing about non-compliant succeeded and non-compliant is basically the principles of SLA items. So if you did delete them, then I don't know what would happen, but they technically do need to exist. But in here is where you can define your own actions. So this is where I said, in the future, I want to experiment with adding delays and looking at other actions that would be useful for it. And that's it.
Very cool.
And so what are you going to be using to report on how many cases met the SLA standards? Are you going to be using anything in the
question.
Power Platform family, like Power BI?
So
I don't know. Power BI?
yeah, well, there's a few options. So in terms of reporting, there's a field called, sorry, let's go back in here.
And as we go back there, it's interesting because one of the for the trainers in Power BI, there's we have some material, and one of it is basically this kind of thing. And so one of the things we show, it's support calls, and one of the things that we show to particularly show one avenue of one feature of the product, one kind of visual, is support cases, like who rates them unhappy, and who what role
analysis.
Well, not so much sentiment. In this one they give a scoring. So based on the scoring, what is the role of that person in the company, what is the size of that company, and what other kind of factors can we derive based on what can, using some of the AI that's built in the system, what can we learn from it. So although I'm a huge fan of the sentiment analysis as well. So, but yeah, that's it. So I was curious in here.
Yeah, okay. So with the SLA items, so the ones that are provided out of the boxes, first response and resolve by, you can create your own custom ones. But with the out of the box ones, there is something like a first SLA response status, which is what I've been updating, so that can be used in terms of reporting. So if I go back into Dynamics 365 and just switch back to the main area of Customer Service Hub, there is this new thing that's in preview at the moment called Analytics and Insights. So this is essentially a Power BI report where it will give information about your cases in Dynamics 365. So the case summary is an overview of all the cases to date. So you can see that there's a chart here that will represent information regarding the SLAs. And then, so you see how there's in progress and then there's non-compliant. Mm-hmm. So that is tied to the field, where is it? SLA status for the first response, and then there's another resolved by SLA status. So if I go back in here, and then it's got CSAT as well, which is, I think, what you were asking about, Belinda. And then in terms of the agent summary, there is another way of being able to filter at a granular level information about the cases in regards to the agent. So there is Power BI capabilities.
It was that key influencer on the right. That's the specific example I was thinking of that we demo with this kind of thing. Yeah, because it shows you and what you're looking at, what influences the CSAT score on the high end. That means like the origin of the case value, when it's 3, it's 3.48 times more likely to be high above average if it's whatever that is, if the value is 3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Cool.
And then
super cool.
It is, isn't it? I like these reports.
And then in terms of not Power BI, in terms of the native functionality,
I don't want to see it.
There's Dynamics 365 dashboards, which is something that also exists today. But yeah, that is the new way of configuring actions in SLA items. So just a quick recap. Now you can configure actions using flows in Power Automate, and
do you use Forms Pro to create surveys at the end? Because that also turns around and links back to Automate. Are you using any of that?
Yeah, so we are using it for customers. And for those of you who don't know what Forms Pro is, or it's also had a name change, head over to Megan V. Walker's blog.
Yep.
She's got great material around Forms Pro, and she also has a YouTube playlist. So if you're wanting to know more about that, then subscribe to her and go check her out, because
Megan is the Forms Pro queen.
Yeah, she's the Forms Pro queen.
So, what's the new name?
Customer
something or another.
I forgot.
Voice,
check.
Is it voice of customer or customer something?
That's okay. It doesn't matter. I could look it up.
I saw her post on it.
We'll call it Forms Pro.
Yeah. Do we have time to quickly go through the other one?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is regarding proper case. So this is the one where I said where if you've got a value that's all in uppercase, so it's all capitalized letters, and you need to manipulate it in a way where it will be not uppercase, but the first letter of each word is uppercase, then this is something that could work for you. I actually had a call with John Liu last night. So John Liu is another Microsoft MVP in our community, because he wanted to show me some cool things. So I actually got him to look at this. And as always, he was like, yeah, it's good. It works. And then he showed me how, another method, which reduced the steps, but that's another day.
That's the beauty about John, right? He will tell you, oh, it works, but then here's how I would do it.
So I actually learned from John. So
yeah, he's great. He's super awesome.
Big ups to John. He's such a good person to learn from in the community. So in terms of the solution, it's utilizing a bunch of compose actions and a variable or initialized variable, and it's going to do append to the variable. So as an example, here's the value that's all in capital letters. So then what we're doing in this expression is that we're saying make it all lowercase and split it out. So then it becomes what we call an array. So when I show you the run history, you're going to see 3 rows. And then here I'm saying that I want to initialize a variable that will be my array. And that's for the purpose of this final action in there. So then we loop through those 3 rows. And basically the expression in here is saying make that first letter in that word capitalize, and then bring it all back. So in other words, the H in the hello, which is going to be lowercase, becomes capitalized, but then I'm concatenating back with the ELLO, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I found this expression on one of the Power Automate community posts, and I just modified it. So I will be blogging about this, by the way, as a WTF episode. And then for each output, I'm saying, okay, cool. Now append it to this array. And then in this final action, this is where I'm saying, okay, join everything back so that it's all back in one sentence. So if I just go ahead and trigger this flow, I'll show you how it all works. Okay. So as you saw earlier, that's hello world today in all capital letters. This action will then make it all lowercase, which is what we're seeing here. That's my array variable, which you'll see at the end. And in here, I'm looping through those 3 rows. So I'm saying make the first letter uppercase, and then it'll concatenate the remaining letters back into one word. And then here I'm saying add it back up to that variable. So then ultimately it just joins all of it back together in one sentence.
I love that, because you did it like a citizen developer would do it, because it was a logical, thorough, step-by-step thought process as you did it. I love it.
Yeah. Thanks.
That is
sorry.
super
I'm not really good with receiving compliments. That's something I'm still learning to do. I tend to deflect.
Oh, come on.
Deflector.
You did a super fine job. I mean, that's and that's the beauty of the platform, right? Simplicity over anything else you can possibly come up with. And like my friend Steve Endow, he showed, and it's one of the things that I continue to learn, is how you can use this platform to produce even sophisticated, complex endpoints for HTTP requests, for example. So web services, pretty much REST, fully REST compliant web services using Power Automate, and the amazing things you can do with the platform end to end, whether that's on the visualization side, whether that's on the app side, whether it's in the workflow side, whether it's in the chatbot side, it's just superb. I mean, when you combine the whole thing, it's just fantastic.
We have a question. Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Many times, as you've demonstrated in this example, it's not obvious how you would do something. It seems like it's not possible, but invariably there is some trick or workaround for getting something done. And the end result is pretty impressive. Sometimes it's a little frustrating to find that last step in the process, but very capable platform.
Yeah. And I feel, sorry, Belinda, I feel quite lucky because there's so many people around the world that you can learn from. So, like I mentioned earlier, I learned from John Liu, but like on a local level. So I have really good colleagues and someone I work really closely with who I consider as my work bestie. His name is Rex Vessels. So we both work in the same team. We work closely together. So he has like an abundance knowledge of developer skills and background that most of my flows that I do now is somewhat very different to when I first started, because I'm learning, concepts and principles from him as well. And that's something that I like. Like, it should never always be about, me. It's about like, embracing others' knowledge and incorporating that in what you know. So I'm very lucky to
That's
work
why I
with,
love these
with
two guys.
good people.
Yeah, that's why I love these two guys. They put them on your list too. We have a question from Jamie Willis Rose. He wants to know.
Hey, Jamie.
He's a great guy. Super smart Power Platform dude. Any word on when the new Power Automate expression editor will go general availability? I know it's available as experimental today.
Yeah, good question.
Even if I knew, I probably couldn't tell you, Jamie. No, I don't have any clue when it will go GA. I don't know. Yeah. Do you know, Steve, by any chance?
No.
I don't know either. I have used it in one of my projects. It has its advantages and disadvantages. I'm pretty sure people know what the disadvantages are, because one of the things that I get caught up on is I usually rename before I write my expressions. But when you enable the new experience and it's still in preview mode, it doesn't allow you to rename until you filled out all the fields in the actions. So that's one of the reasons why I don't really use it as much.
Yeah.
Can I do a little me moment since we're close to the end?
Sure.
Right in the middle of our last Power Platform share, guys, if I had been looking at my email, I would have known that I was named All-Star for Power Platform. Yay! Wow. I know, right? All-Star awesome. Power Platform. How about that for the Dynamics community?
You are flying high right now.
I am, and when I got off and I looked at my email, I'm like, oh man, I wish I'd opened that up earlier. But yeah, really. that was pretty cool. So now I have 2 All-Stars, one for the GP user group, and now this one. So
there you go, Elijah. That's the next thing you gotta aspire to.
Yeah, we'll be All-Star sisters. So, any closing words as we? Thank you, Jamie. Any closing words before we leave for the day?
I guess the only message I have to say during this time is just be kind and supportive of each other, and yeah. And
the woman wants to know who's gonna invite her for breakfast because she got up early for us.
oh, I'm fine.
Is it cold? Is it cold outside there?
I had the heater on. I haven't been outside. I don't think it was as cold. Like, we do go through cold nights here in New Zealand, but let's face it, we're not in, let's say, Scandinavia, so it doesn't drop down to like the negative figures. But yeah, it's been fine.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Nice.
The sun's out,
Nice.
so yeah.
Well, good.
But yeah, thanks so much for having me, Steve, Mariano, and Belinda. I hope everyone who's watching enjoyed it.
Any other way. We
Yep.
would not have it any other way. We actually were dying to get you on our show because
Thank
we
you.
know how fun you are. We know how creative you are. You are a really true rock star in the community. Very well respected by everybody. And believe me, we will be having you in the future too. So
Yes.
thanks for coming on. You are
Getting shy.
Okay, so
I do
go
have
ahead.
one more comment. Sorry, just so that everyone in here is listening. We do have Para Friday coming up at the end of this month in New Zealand. For those of you who don't know what's happening in New Zealand, COVID has kind of crept up again, so it might be that we might go completely virtual. So keep your eyes peeled because we do have cool topics, and me and my work bestie, Rex Vessels, who I mentioned, we're going to be doing a session on 5 tricks on how to level up with Power Apps portals. So if you can.
So tell you what, I'm gonna invite you to send us an email
Yeah.
with all those cool links that you think we should have, because obviously we don't always know what's going on over in New Zealand, but
Okay.
let us know what those links are. We will be able to put it right down here for everybody to see. And we will love to definitely sign up for anything we can help on or present, any topic we can present. So, count with us. We love you very much.
We do.
Any last words, Belinda?
No, I thank you guys for attending. Jamie, thanks for hanging in with us too. I appreciate that. Elaiza is awesome. That was the last thing he wrote. And girl, you need to learn how to take a compliment. Just soak it in, because you are a powerhouse, and you are definitely someone that everyone in the community should strive to be. So thank you for supporting the kindness. We hope you guys stay safe in New Zealand. I mean, we're someone to talk. It's kind of a mess here in the U.S. So, yeah, I think the three of us stay virtual pretty much all the time anyhow now. So, stay safe. Guys, you guys are always amazing. Thanks so much.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you, Belinda. All right, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.